The red emergency light flashed on Ambassador Taemin Park's desk for the third time in 10 minutes. He set down his morning coffee and accepted the incoming message from the Galactic Council headquarters. The holographic display showed the familiar blue seal of the Council, but something was different. The usual formal greeting was replaced by urgent text that made his blood run cold. Emergency session called. All ambassadors must attend immediately. No delays accepted. Taemin had served as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 8 years. He had seen political crises, trade disputes, and border conflicts. But he had never seen a message like this. The Council operated on careful schedules planned months in advance. Emergency sessions were almost unheard of. Captain So-Young Kim knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. Her face was pale, and she carried a datapad filled with incoming reports. "Sir, we're getting strange messages from across the galaxy. Something big is happening." Taemin stood and walked to the large window of his ship, the Terra's voice. Outside, space looked peaceful as always. Stars dotted the darkness like tiny diamonds. But somewhere out there, something was wrong. "What kind of messages?" he asked. So-Young activated her datapad and read from the screen. "Trade ships are reporting empty systems where colonies used to be. Some cargo vessels have found entire planets just gone. Not destroyed, not moved. Gone. Like they never existed at all." The ambassador felt a chill run down his spine. "How many reports?" 17 confirmed cases in the past week. "But sir, that's not the worst part." So-Young's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "We're getting refugee ships at the edge of our territory. The crews are terrified. They keep talking about something they call the Devourers." Taemin turned back to his desk and pressed the communication button. "Colonel Lee, Dr. Choi, please report to my office immediately. We're leaving for the Council Station in 1 hour." Within minutes, Colonel Woo-Jin Lee and Dr. Hae-Jin Choi arrived. Colonel Lee was a tall man with serious eyes who had fought in 3 different conflicts. Dr. Choi was one of Earth's best scientists who studied alien life forms. Both looked worried. "Have you seen the reports?" Taemin asked them. Colonel Lee nodded. "Our deep space sensors picked up some strange readings last week. We thought they were equipment failures. Now I'm not so sure." Dr. Choi pulled up her own data on a portable screen. "I've been analyzing the refugee testimonies. The survivors all describe the same thing. Ships that can change and adapt, weapons that learn how to defend against any attack, and they consume everything they defeat." The Terra's voice jumped to faster than light speed an hour later. The journey to the Council Station normally took 2 days, but Captain So-Young pushed the engines harder than usual. Everyone on board felt the urgency. When they arrived at the massive Council Station orbiting Nexus Prime, Taemin was surprised by what he saw. The station was usually busy with ships from hundreds of different worlds. Today it looked almost empty. Only the most important diplomatic vessels were docked. The Great Assembly Hall could hold representatives from over 300 species. Today less than half the seats were filled. But those who had come looked frightened. Taemin recognized the proud Altarian delegates with their golden skin and tall bodies. He saw the ancient Vorthak with their multiple arms and wise eyes. Even the powerful Chronari who looked like giant insects seemed nervous. Council Prime Velthar called the session to order. The Chronari leader's voice clicked and buzzed as he spoke through the translation system. "Fellow representatives, we face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. 2 months ago, our long-range sensors detected ships entering our galaxy from dark space beyond our borders. We thought they might be explorers or refugees from some distant conflict." The hall was completely silent. Taemin had never seen the normally noisy council so quiet. Velthar continued. "We were wrong. These ships began attacking our outer colonies. At first we thought this was a normal invasion that our combined fleets could handle. We sent the Altarian Third Fleet to investigate. High Commander Kethnor of the Altarian Empire stood up. His golden face was grim. My fleet engaged the enemy near the Corval system. The battle started well. Our energy weapons were effective and we destroyed several enemy ships. Then something changed. The Altarian commander activated a holographic display showing the battle. Taemin watched as bright energy beams from Altarian ships struck dark, strange-looking vessels. The enemy ships exploded and burned. But then, as the battle continued, the enemy ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and adapted. The energy weapons that had destroyed them before suddenly had no effect. Within 6 hours, our weapons were useless, Kethanor said. The enemy had learned how to defend against everything we used. Worse, they began copying our weapons and using them against us. We lost the entire fleet. A representative from the Vorthak Collective stood next. The ancient alien's multiple eyes were filled with sadness. We sent our best quantum torpedo ships to the Xerion Nebula 3 weeks ago. The same thing happened. Our weapons worked at first, then became useless. The enemy adapted and destroyed our forces. One by one, other species shared similar stories. The Zelhari had tried psionic attacks. The Korath had used their famous planet cracker missiles. The Nexari had sent their elite stealth fleets. Every attack followed the same pattern. Initial success, then complete failure as the enemy learned and adapted. Dr. Choi leaned over to whisper in Timon's ear. Sir, this enemy is unlike anything we've studied. They're not just adapting their defenses. They're learning entire technologies in hours and then improving them. Colonel Lee added his own quiet observation. If they can adapt this quickly, no conventional military strategy will work against them. Velthar showed a star map of the galaxy. Red zones marked where the enemy had struck. Tamin counted 14 systems that were completely dark. Empty space where planets and people used to live. We estimate that at their current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months, Velthar said. We have called this emergency session to coordinate our remaining forces and plan our response. The debates that followed were chaotic and desperate. Some species wanted to evacuate their populations to the far edge of the galaxy. Others proposed building a massive defensive line around the core worlds. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the enemy. Taimin listened to each proposal with growing concern. Every plan assumed defeat was inevitable. Everyone was planning how to survive, not how to win. As Earth's representative, he began to realize that humanity might be the galaxy's only hope. But first, he needed to understand exactly what they were fighting against. The second day of the emergency session began with more bad news. During the night, 3 more star systems had gone dark. The enemy was moving faster than anyone had predicted. Ambassador Tae-min sat with his team in a private meeting room aboard the council station. Colonel Woo Jin Lee spread intelligence reports across the table while Dr. Hai-Jin Choi worked on her portable computer. The pattern is becoming clearer, Dr. Choi said without looking up from her screen. Every species has made the same mistake. They sent their best ships with their most advanced weapons. The enemy studies these weapons during battle, learns how they work, then creates better versions. Captain So-Young Kim pointed to one of the reports. Look at this battle record from the Vorthak engagement. Their quantum torpedoes destroyed 12 enemy ships in the first hour, but by the end of the battle, the enemy was using quantum torpedoes that were twice as powerful as the originals. Colonel Lee nodded grimly. It's not just copying. They're improving everything they encounter. The Altarian energy weapons they captured were modified to penetrate Altarian shields. The Korath missiles they studied were redesigned to be faster and more destructive. Taemin studied the data with growing horror. How is this possible? Even our best scientists need months or years to understand new technology. That's what makes this enemy so dangerous, Dr. Choi replied. They appear to be some kind of collective intelligence. Every ship shares knowledge instantly with every other ship. When one learns something, they all learn it immediately. Admiral Sang-Ho Yoon appeared on their communication screen from the Human Defense Fleet. His weathered face looked tired but determined. Ambassador, I've been analyzing our deep space reconnaissance data. The situation is worse than the Council realizes. The Admiral shared his intelligence with the group. Long-range sensors had detected the enemy's true size. What everyone thought was an invasion fleet was actually just the advance force. Behind them, hidden in dark space, were thousands more ships. They're not just invading, Admiral Yoon explained. They're harvesting. Every planet they attack, every ship they destroy, every piece of technology they encounter makes them stronger. This started as maybe 50 ships 2 months ago. Our latest count shows over 300 active vessels. Captain So-Young looked at the numbers with disbelief. They're growing by consuming their victories. Exactly, the Admiral confirmed. And their rate of growth is accelerating. At this pace, they'll have 1,000 ships within a month. The team returned to the main assembly hall where the debates continued. Taemin listened as species after species shared their failures and fears. The proud Altarians who had dominated this region of space for centuries now spoke of evacuation plans. The ancient Vorthak, with their vast wisdom and experience, admitted they had no solution. Representative Kaltos of the Korath stood to address the assembly. His people were known as the galaxy's greatest warriors, but his voice shook as he spoke. We have faced many enemies in our long history. We have fought pirates, rebels, and invaders. But this enemy is different. They do not just defeat us. They become us. They take our strengths and make them their own. The Nexari delegate agreed. Our stealth technology was our greatest advantage. Now the enemy has stealth ships that are better than ours. Our own weapons cannot penetrate their defenses because they learned our weaknesses from our own ships. Taman noticed something important in these testimonies. Every species had tried to fight the enemy using their greatest strengths. The Altarians used energy weapons because that was their specialty. The Vorthak used quantum technology because they were the masters of quantum physics. The Korath used heavy missiles because they built the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Dr. Choi seemed to be thinking the same thing. She quietly passed him a note. They're giving the enemy exactly what it needs to defeat them. The debates grew more desperate as the day continued. High Commander Keith Knorr proposed a fighting retreat to the galaxy's edge. We cannot win a direct confrontation. Our only hope is to delay them while we evacuate our populations. The Vorthak representative suggested something even more desperate. Perhaps we should try to communicate with them. Maybe they can be reasoned with or negotiated with. Council Prime Velthar's mandibles clicked nervously. We have tried sending diplomatic messages. They do not respond to any communication. They simply consume everything in their path. As the afternoon progressed, Taman watched the greatest military minds in the galaxy admit defeat. Species that had fought wars for thousands of years were giving up without a real fight, but he was beginning to see something they missed. During a break in the session, his team gathered again in their private room. Colonel Lee was reviewing tactical data while Captain So-Young monitored communications from Earth. Sir, So-Young said, we're getting reports from our outer colonies. Some of our freighter captains have spotted strange ships in deep space. The enemy might already be probing our territory. Colonel Lee looked up from his analysis. If they follow the same pattern, they'll hit our outer defenses first. Our main fleet is positioned around Earth and the core colonies. Good, Taman said quietly. His team looked at him in surprise. Dr. Choi raised an eyebrow. Good, sir? Yes, good that they're coming toward us. Good that they'll encounter our defenses. And especially good that every other species in this galaxy thinks we're about to be destroyed just like them. Admiral Yoon's voice came through the communicator. Ambassador, I need to brief you on something classified. Can you establish a secure connection? Taman activated the room's privacy shields and gave the Admiral permission to continue. Sir, we've been working on some contingency plans since the first reports came in. Plans that the Council doesn't know about. Plans that might give us an advantage. What kind of plans? The Admiral's face became serious. The kind that require everyone to think we're losing right up until the moment we win. The kind that use the enemy's greatest strength against them. Taemin understood immediately. While every other species tried to fight the enemy with their best technology, humanity could try something different, something the enemy wouldn't expect. How long do we have? He asked. Based on their current movement pattern, they'll reach human space in 4 to 6 weeks. But sir, for this to work, the Council needs to believe we're just another species about to be destroyed. Taemin looked at his team. Each of them was beginning to understand what he was thinking. They would have to convince the galaxy's greatest powers to participate in a plan that looked like certain defeat. Admiral, begin your preparations, and make sure our communications with Earth look appropriately desperate. The session resumed, and Taemin listened to more reports of defeat and retreat. But now he was no longer worried. Now he was planning. Tomorrow he would shock the Galactic Council with an announcement that would change everything. The third day of the emergency session began with the worst news yet. Overnight, the enemy had destroyed an entire Altarian colony world. 20 million people were gone. The Great Assembly Hall was filled with barely controlled panic. Ambassador Taemin watched as delegate after delegate stood to report new disasters. The proud warriors of the Korath spoke of evacuating their border worlds. The ancient Vorthak discussed abandoning their outer research stations. Even the confident Nexari were pulling back their ships to defend their home systems. Council Prime Velthar called for order, but his voice carried the weight of defeat. Fellow representatives, we must face reality. Our combined fleets cannot stop this enemy. We must now focus on saving as many lives as possible. High Commander Kethnor activated a holographic star map. Red zones showed where the enemy had struck. The pattern was clear and terrifying. They were cutting straight through the galaxy toward the most populated core worlds. I propose we establish a defensive line here, Kethnor said, pointing to a cluster of fortified systems. We can evacuate populations behind this line while our remaining fleets delay the enemy advance. The Vorthak representative stood with his multiple arms spread wide. Even if we could hold such a line, it would only delay the inevitable. This enemy learns from every battle. Eventually, they will overcome any defense we create. Other delegates began shouting suggestions and arguments. Some wanted to scatter their populations across dark space. Others proposed hiding in distant nebulas until the enemy moved on. A few even suggested surrender might be possible. Taman listened to the chaos with growing anger. These were the greatest military powers in the galaxy, and they were talking about running away. He thought about Earth, about humanity's long history of fighting impossible odds. Then he stood up. I request permission to address the assembly, he said in a clear, strong voice. The hall gradually became quiet. Felthar's mandibles clicked nervously. The human representative has the floor. Taman walked to the center of the great hall. Hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. He could feel the weight of their desperation and fear. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the chamber. Honored representatives, I have listened to your plans for the past 3 days. I have heard strategies for evacuation. I have heard proposals for retreat. I have heard discussions of surrender. But I have heard nothing about victory. A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembly. Several delegates exchanged glances. The Korath representative Kaltos spoke up. Human, your species is brave, but surely you understand the reality of our situation. This enemy cannot be defeated by conventional means. Taman nodded. You are absolutely correct. This enemy cannot be defeated by conventional means. But you have all made the same mistake. He activated his personal display, showing tactical analyses that Colonel Wu Jin Lee had prepared. The holographic images showed battle after battle, all following the same pattern. Every one of you has tried to fight this enemy with your greatest strengths. The Altarians used their advanced energy weapons. The Vorthak deployed their quantum technology. The Korath brought their most powerful missiles, and every single time you handed the enemy exactly what they needed to defeat you. High Commander Kethnor's golden face showed confusion. What choice did we have? We used our best weapons because they were our best hope of victory. That thinking is what doomed you, Taman replied. This enemy adapts to whatever it encounters. By showing them your best technology, you taught them how to build better versions. You gave them the keys to defeating not just your fleets, but your entire civilization. Dr. Hyojin Choi had prepared detailed analysis of the enemy's adaptation patterns. Taman shared this data with the assembly, showing how each species' greatest weapons had become the enemy's greatest weapons. Look at this pattern, he said, highlighting the timeline of each battle. The Altarian energy weapons that destroyed enemy ships in the first hour became useless by the 4th hour. But the enemy's copied versions were powerful enough to destroy Altarian shields that had never been penetrated before. The Vorthak representative's ancient eyes showed understanding. You are suggesting that our strength became our weakness. Exactly. And more than that, you've been fighting the wrong war entirely. Taman paused to let his words sink in. The assembly was completely silent now, hanging on his every word. You've been trying to win individual battles, but this enemy doesn't care about individual battles. They care about learning from each encounter. Every time you fought them, you were actually teaching them how to defeat your entire species. Captain So Young Kim watched from the observation gallery as her ambassador continued. She knew what was coming next, and she felt proud and terrified at the same time. The question is not how to defeat this enemy in battle, Taman said. The question is how to control what they learn from us. Velthar leaned forward in his seat. Explain your meaning, human. Taman looked around the great hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of different worlds. When he spoke again, his voice carried absolute confidence. Humanity has been fighting losing battles for our entire existence. We have fought with primitive weapons against advanced enemies. We have been outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched in almost every conflict in our history. And yet we are still here. He gestured to the star map showing the enemy's advance. This enemy thinks they are invincible because they can adapt to any technology they encounter. But they have never encountered an enemy that knows how to lose. The confusion in the hall was visible. Several delegates began speaking at once, but Taemin's next words cut through their voices like a blade. We know how to lose battles in order to win wars. We know how to make an enemy overconfident by showing them exactly what they expect to see, and we know how to make our greatest weakness look like our greatest strength. He paused again, then delivered the words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. It is time for war, but not the kind of war you have been fighting. It is time for a human war. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, delegates began to understand what he was proposing. The Nexari representative was the first to speak. You want us to deliberately lose battles? I want us to deliberately control what the enemy learns from those battles, Taemin corrected. I want us to teach them to be overconfident. I want us to show them weaknesses that aren't real and hide strengths they don't expect. Admiral Sang Ho Yoon's voice came through the communication system from the human fleet. The human military command is prepared to share our strategy with any species willing to participate. High Commander Kethnor stood up, his golden face showing the first hope Taemin had seen in 3 days. What exactly are you proposing? Taemin smiled for the first time since the session began. I am proposing that we give this enemy exactly what they expect to find. Desperate defenders using their best technology in predictable ways. I am proposing that we make them think they have learned everything there is to know about galactic military capabilities. He activated a new display showing human fleet positions, and while they are becoming overconfident from their easy victories, we will be preparing something they have never encountered before. Something they cannot adapt to because they will never see it coming. The assembly erupted in discussion as delegates realized the implications of the human proposal. For the first time in 3 days, they were talking about victory instead of defeat. The great assembly hall buzzed with heated discussions as delegates tried to understand the human proposal. Ambassador Taemin stood patiently in the center, while alien voices rose in argument around him. Some species were intrigued by his confidence. Others thought humanity had lost its mind. Council Prime Velthar called for order. The human representative will explain his strategy in detail. Colonel Wu Jin Lee joined Taemin at the center of the hall. The military officer activated a holographic display showing fleet positions across the galaxy. As he spoke, his calm voice carried the authority of someone who had studied warfare his entire life. The enemy's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, Colonel Lee began. They adapt to whatever they encounter, but this adaptation follows predictable patterns. Each time they learn something new, they become locked into that knowledge. Dr. Heejin Choi stepped forward to explain the scientific analysis. We have studied every battle report you have shared. The enemy's adaptation process creates blind spots. When they learn to counter energy weapons, they become less effective against other types of attacks. When they focus on defending against one threat, they become vulnerable to different approaches. The Vorthak representative raised one of his forearms. But how can we exploit this? They learn so quickly that any advantage disappears within hours. That's where the human approach differs from yours, Dr. Choi replied. Instead of trying to surprise them with our best technology, we will control their learning process. We will teach them specific lessons while hiding our real capabilities. Admiral Sang Ho Yoon appeared on the main communication screen. His weathered face showed the confidence of a veteran commander. We propose a coordinated deception operation across multiple fronts. Each participating species will contribute ships and personnel to stage a series of carefully planned defeats. The word defeats caused an uproar in the assembly. High Commander Kethnor stood up angrily. You want us to sacrifice our ships and crews for this plan? Captain So Young Kim spoke from the observation gallery. Not sacrifice, invest. Every ship we lose in the deception phase will save hundreds of ships in the final battle. Colonel Lee showed the detailed strategy on the holographic display. Phase 1 involves each species deploying their fleets using predictable tactics and conventional weapons. The enemy will defeat these fleets but learn only what we want them to learn. The plan was complex but brilliant. Each defeated fleet would be equipped with hidden sensors and communication devices. As the enemy captured and studied the ships, they would unknowingly reveal information about their own technology and tactics. Phase 2 begins when the enemy becomes overconfident, Admiral Yoon explained. They will believe they have learned everything about galactic military capabilities. That is when they will make their mistake. Dr. Choi activated another display showing the enemy's projected movement patterns. Based on their behavior so far, they will attempt to strike directly at the most important targets. We believe they will focus their main force on Earth as the newest threat to their expansion. The Altarian delegate looked shocked. You want to use your own homeworld as bait? Taman nodded calmly. Earth will be defended by ships using deliberately primitive technology, weapons and tactics so old that most of you consider them barely above throwing rocks. Several delegates began protesting loudly. The Korath representative Kaltos shouted over the noise. This is madness. You cannot defend a planet with primitive weapons against an enemy that has adapted to our most advanced technology. That's exactly why it will work, Colonel Lee replied. The enemy has spent months learning to counter advanced galactic technology. They will not be prepared for weapons they consider obsolete. Admiral Yoon shared classified information about humanity's secret preparations. For the past month, we have been retrofitting our reserve fleet with ancient technology. Chemical rockets, ballistic projectiles, nuclear weapons, and kinetic impactors. Technology that predates galactic civilization by centuries. The assembly fell silent as they tried to understand this strategy. The Nexari delegate spoke first. You believe primitive weapons will be more effective than our advanced systems? Against this specific enemy, yes, Dr. Choi confirmed. Their adaptation systems are designed to counter sophisticated technology. They analyze energy patterns, quantum signatures, and exotic matter interactions. But they struggle with simple physics. Captain So Young explained further. A chunk of metal moving at high velocity is just a chunk of metal moving at high velocity. There's nothing to adapt to, nothing to improve upon. The enemy can build stronger armor, but they can't change the basic laws of physics. The strategy had another crucial element that Admiral Yoon revealed carefully. Every ship in our deception fleets will carry hidden packages. Microscopic devices that will be absorbed into the enemy's systems when they capture our technology. What kind of devices? Belthar asked suspiciously. Navigation beacons, the Admiral replied. Devices that will map the enemy's entire fleet network and reveal the location of their home base. While they think they are learning about our weaknesses, we will be learning about theirs. The plan required unprecedented cooperation between species that had been rivals for centuries. Each would have to trust humanity with their most advanced ships and crews. Each would have to accept the loss of those forces for the greater strategy. High Commander Kethenor was the first to agree. The Altarian Empire will contribute 50 ships to the Deception Fleet. Our energy weapons specialists will make the enemy overconfident in their ability to counter directed energy attacks. The Vorthak representative followed. The collective will provide 30 quantum-equipped vessels. If this plan fails, we are all doomed anyway. One by one, other species committed their forces to the human strategy. The Korath would contribute their missile ships. The Nexari would provide stealth vessels. The Zilari would send their psionic warfare specialists. But the most shocking part of the plan was yet to be revealed. Taman looked around the assembly one final time before sharing the last crucial detail. There is one more element to our strategy that you must understand, he said quietly. The deception fleets are not just bait. They are the delivery system for our real weapon. Dr. Choi activated a new display showing complex biological and technological schematics. Hidden within every device we plant on enemy ships is something more than a navigation beacon. We call it the gift. What kind of gift? The Vorthak representative asked. The complete technical specifications for faster-than-light communication across galactic distances, Admiral Yoon replied. Information that will allow the enemy to coordinate their entire invasion fleet instantly and perfectly. The assembly erupted in shocked protests. Several delegates shouted accusations of treason, but Taemin raised his hand for silence. You are giving them the ability to coordinate perfectly, because perfect coordination requires perfect communication, he explained. And perfect communication means that when we activate our real weapon, every enemy ship in the galaxy will receive the signal simultaneously. The final piece of the human strategy was the most audacious of all. While the enemy was learning to coordinate perfectly, humanity would be preparing to turn that coordination against them. Captain So Young spoke the final words that made everything clear. We're not just teaching them to beat us. We're teaching them to beat themselves. The vote to approve the human strategy was closer than Taemin had hoped, but it passed. As delegates dispersed to prepare their fleets, he received a private message from Admiral Yoon. Phase 1 begins tomorrow. The real war starts now. 6 weeks after the council meeting, the human plan was working exactly As Ambassador Taemin had predicted, the enemy had carved a path of destruction straight toward Earth, growing stronger and more confident with each victory. They had adapted to counter every weapon the Galactic Alliance had thrown at them, exactly as intended. Admiral Sang-Ho Yoon stood on the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, watching enemy ships approach Earth's outer defenses. His vessel looked ancient compared to the sleek galactic warships the enemy had learned to destroy. Chemical rockets and ballistic weapons lined its hull. Nuclear missiles waited in primitive launch tubes. To any observer, it appeared humanity was defending their homeworld with museum pieces. "Admiral, enemy fleet has reached the outer system," reported his communications officer. "They're moving in the predicted formation." Through the main view screen, Yoon could see the enemy ships. They had grown larger and more sophisticated since their first appearance. Captured Altarian energy weapons glowed along their hulls. Vorthak quantum shields shimmered around their forms. Korath missile launchers had been integrated into their designs. They had become a perfect fusion of every technology they had encountered. Captain So-Young Kim commanded the Seoul's Defiance from her position in the asteroid belt. Her ship was even more primitive than the Admiral's flagship. Kinetic impactors and chemical explosives were her only weapons. According to every military textbook in the galaxy, she was about to die fighting an impossible battle. "Ma'am, sensors show the enemy is scanning our weapons," her tactical officer reported. "They seem confused by our technology levels." So-Young smiled grimly. "Good. Let them wonder why we're fighting with antiques. It won't matter for much longer." On Earth's surface, Colonel Woo Jin Lee coordinated the planet's defenses from a bunker beneath Seoul. His screen showed the space battle developing exactly as the humans had planned. The enemy was committing their full force to what they believed would be an easy victory. "Colonel, we're receiving reports from all sectors," his aide announced. "The enemy is having trouble adapting to our primitive weapons just as Dr. Choi predicted. The first phase of Earth's defense went according to plan. Human ships armed with ancient technology managed to damage and even destroy several enemy vessels. The enemy's sophisticated adaptation systems, trained on galactic superweapons, struggled to counter simple kinetic impactors and chemical explosives. But the humans knew this advantage wouldn't last long. Even primitive weapons could be countered given enough time. The real purpose of the battle was not to win, but to force the enemy to commit their entire invasion fleet to Earth's destruction. Dr. Hee-Jin Choi worked frantically in her laboratory beneath the lunar surface. Banks of computers processed data streaming in from the hidden beacons planted on enemy ships during the past 6 weeks. Every captured vessel, every absorbed technology, every adapted weapon had carried humanity's gift into the heart of the enemy fleet. "Dr. Choi, we have full network mapping," her assistant reported. "The beacons are active in over 800 enemy vessels across 17 galactic sectors." Hee-Jin looked at the display showing the enemy's complete fleet network. Red dots represented their ships scattered across the galaxy. Glowing lines showed their communication links. After months of seeming defeat, humanity finally knew exactly where every enemy ship was located. "Activate the secondary function," she ordered. The hidden beacons began their real work. Instead of just mapping the enemy network, they started transmitting the gift that Admiral Yoon had mentioned to the Council. Technical specifications for faster-than-light communication technology flooded into enemy systems. Within hours, the enemy fleet achieved perfect coordination. Every ship could communicate instantly with every other ship. Their tactical efficiency increased dramatically. From their perspective, they had just gained an incredible advantage that made them nearly unstoppable. They had no idea they had just activated their own destruction. Back in space above Earth, the battle was reaching its climax. Admiral Yoon watched as enemy ships overwhelmed his primitive defenses through sheer numbers. Several human vessels were destroyed, their ancient weapons no match for adapted alien technology, but every loss was part of the plan. "Admiral, the enemy is committing their reserve forces," his tactical officer reported. "They're bringing everything they have to finish us." "Perfect," Yoon replied. "Signal all ships. Prepare for final phase activation." Captain So-Young received the signal as her ship came under heavy fire. Enemy energy weapons, adapted from dozens of different species, tore through her shields. But she had already completed her mission. The enemy fleet was exactly where humanity needed them to be. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over her ship's communication system. "It has been an honor serving with you. Remember, we're not dying for Earth. We're winning for the galaxy. The Soul's defiance exploded in a brilliant flash of light, but its destruction triggered something the enemy could never have expected. Dr. Choi activated the final phase of humanity's master plan. Hidden within the gift of communication technology was a weapon more dangerous than any energy cannon or quantum torpedo. It was information itself. Every enemy ship in the galaxy suddenly received the same signal simultaneously, not coordinates for an attack or technical specifications for a new weapon. Instead, they received something that their collective intelligence could not ignore: the complete navigation data for their home galaxy and the exact location of their species' origin point. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The enemy's perfect coordination became perfect chaos. Every ship in their network suddenly knew that their home galaxy was defenseless. Every vessel received urgent instructions to return and protect their birth world. Every captain, every crew, every collective intelligence node experienced the same overwhelming compulsion. They had to go home. They had to go home now. Admiral Yoon watched in amazement as the massive enemy fleet suddenly stopped its attack on Earth. One by one, the dark ships began turning away from the planet. Within minutes, they were accelerating toward the galactic edge at maximum speed. "Sir, what's happening?" his communications officer asked. Dr. Choi just proved that sometimes the best way to defeat an invasion is to make the invaders worry about being invaded themselves, Yoon replied. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out in every system. Enemy ships that had been systematically destroying planets and colonies suddenly abandoned their positions. The unstoppable invasion fleet that had terrorized civilized space for months disappeared into dark space as quickly as it had arrived. But humanity's plan had one final surprise. As the enemy ships raced back to their home galaxy, they carried more than just urgent fear. Hidden in their communication systems, invisible to their sensors, were detailed scans of every world they had conquered and every technology they had absorbed. When they reached their home galaxy, they would unknowingly deliver everything they had learned to humanity's real weapon: a follow-up fleet equipped with perfect intelligence about enemy weaknesses and carrying weapons designed specifically to counter their adaptive abilities. 3 days later, Ambassador Taemin stood in the damaged but intact council chambers. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The enemy was gone. Colonies were safe. The invasion had ended not with a final battle, but with the invaders simply leaving. Captain So-young, who had escaped her exploding ship in an emergency pod, joined him at the podium. "Sir, how did you know it would work?" Taemin looked out at the assembled delegates, many of whom still seemed stunned by humanity's victory. "Because we understood something about this enemy that no one else realized. They weren't just adaptive, they were homesick." He gestured to the star charts showing the enemy's retreat. Any species capable of crossing the void between galaxies had to be desperately fleeing something in their home territory. They weren't invading us because they wanted to conquer. They were invading us because they needed a new home. Dr. Choi had discovered this crucial insight in her analysis of enemy behavior patterns. The invaders weren't explorers or conquerors. They were refugees who had convinced themselves that attack was their only option for survival. The moment they believed their home galaxy was threatened, every other priority became secondary, Taemin explained. "We didn't defeat them with superior technology or tactics. We defeated them by reminding them of what they had left behind." Council Prime Velthar approached the human delegation with something approaching awe. "Your species has saved us all. How can we repay this debt?" Taemin smiled and looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of worlds. "Help us make sure this never happens again. Help us build a galaxy where refugees don't feel they have to become invaders to survive." As reports continued to arrive confirming the enemy's complete withdrawal, one message stood out from the rest. It came from the edge of dark space, transmitted on human frequencies. The enemy had sent a communication. Not a threat or a demand, but something unprecedented, a thank you. They had found what they were looking for in their home galaxy. The crisis that had driven them to invade was over. They would not return. Ambassador Taemin read the message to the assembled council. When he finished, the great hall was silent for a long moment. Then slowly applause began, not just from Hummel,